Hi there, and welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. We are now at part 3 of NEWish comics, bitches! So, kicking it off, Superman Beyond, number 0. Now, Superman Beyond, if you can't tell, is part of the, Batman Beyond universe. Excuse me. And you really get, it's really nice that, that this is a continuation of the Superman character from the cartoon, which, there was this big two-parter where, Terry, as Batman, is invited to join the Justice League, but ultimately kind of sits it out, and, Superman's actually the villain of that story. But he wasn't really Superman. He was, I think, he was brainwashed, something like that. Somebody who's out there, if you've read Batman Beyond, please remind me. Or if you watch Batman Beyond, please remind me. So, Superman is kind of returning to Earth after a year absence. The reason he's been gone for years is that Lois had, his wife has been dead for a year, and he just hasn't known what to do with himself. He's facing essentially obsolescence. He doesn't know if the world even needs a Superman anymore. And in the midst of this, you've got this this kind of B story with which turns out to be the main story, with this kind of repentant convict behind bars who wants to do the right thing by his family, but ultimately, his family is going to be taken away from him. This is where the book really bothers me, because this is literally taken straight out of the plot of the arc of Flint Marko, aka the Sandman, in the film Spider-Man 3. It's literally, it's just like, okay, he's behind bars. He's trying to, he's not behind bars, but he's a criminal. He wants to do right by his kid, but the wife doesn't want him around the kid. He gets turned into something other than human and begins wreaking fucking havoc all over the place. So and of course, this all happens, by, these convicts are being used as cleanup at an old, LexCorp lab. And of course, since it's Lex Luthor, something bad is in some of these jars, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so the Justice League comes to intervene, and they try their best, but this Justice League is just not a very coherent team if they can't take down this one guy. And of course, it's up to Superman to bail out the Justice League kind of again. And when it comes down to it, it's another illustration of Superman doing the right thing, regardless of the consequences, because that's something that I've not only come to rely on, but one of the things that I've come to love about Superman. This is not Superman. To me, is I know that people really like their superheroes to be morally conflicted, and to have all of these things going on where they have to make a choice between this or that. It's nice to know that there is a superhero out there that doesn't need that shit, and that's Superman. And that's one of the reasons that Superman, he's a beloved character, and he's so iconic, because this is a guy that you can always count on to do the right thing. And that's changed, somewhat over the years. Certain writers have gotten their hands on them and, tried to make it darker and more relevant to society, and that's fine. But, Superman's not a dark character, and he doesn't need that. So, I mean, that, he doesn't need to have that moralistic, his integrity question. That's basically where I'm coming from. So, aside from the fact that, like I said, this whole plot with the criminal stolen straight out of Spider-Man 3 that's almost forgivable. Because there's also a really nice scene between the old Bruce and the old Clark at the end, where he's coming to visit the Lois's grave. And that's just a nice scene overall. Basically, that Clark is going to get back to work as being a reporter for the Daily Planet. And it's also nice to see this old school art they got going on in this book, with Ron Frenz and Sal Buscema doing the pencils and inks respectively. I like, every once in a while, it's like, it's weird because I don't like some older, 70s, early 80s era art sometimes, but then sometimes I go back and, sometimes when I see it amongst all the current art that's out there, a lot of it seems, very kind of processed, very cookie cutter, like everybody's trying to copy this guy or that guy, and, but then you have these guys that bring their own distinctive style, and, it's an older school style, and it works. So, I give the story about a 6, I give the art like a 9. So it's, it's a good comic, and I'm hoping that it will get better. Project Superman, Flashpoint Project Superman number 3. This was one of the 2 Flashpoint tie-ins that I actually did care about, and it works, and it worked really well all throughout. It didn't work quite as powerfully as Batman: Night of Vengeance, but Project Superman does, in its own right, is also very strong. Basically you've got Subject Zero, who's been in the Phantom Zone for 5 years. He fights his way out. He gets back to Earth, and immediately kills Sam Lane. Doesn't even let him get a word out. He says, no, final words. No final rebukes or anything like that from you. I'm just, you're dead. Splat. You're done. And he immediately, is ready to cut a swath through all of humanity just to get to, this, the superhuman threats that are out there. And the biggest one to him right now is Cal. Now Cal, in the meantime, has found his way to New Themyscira and is surveying the damage there, but also is trying to find Lois, because he knows that she's there and wants to protect her. Because, it's been 5 years since the last issue, so we know where we are. We are now in the present of Flashpoint, what's going on currently in that comic. So now the final battle must happen between, Cal and Subject Zero, and it ends, with Superman, I'm sorry, Cal doing, again, the right thing to do, and not just out fighting, but out thinking Subject Zero. And that's where the really cool elements happen in this book, but unfortunately it does end tragically for all the characters. Nobody gets through this unscathed. Flashpoint, the world of Flashpoint is a very ugly world, and I'm glad that it's over. I'm glad that particular series is over, because it's too dark, it's too ugly, it's too harsh, it's just and for the most part it's too uninteresting, because when you just cram that much you know, like all this, you know, Fincher-esque darkness into this one universe where the whole universe is like that, it just gets dull. So that's where I think Jeff Johns made a big mistake. But other than that, so I mean, you know, this end, you know, the tragic ending does segue directly into what, you know, Cal must now be, and, you know, segues directly into Flashpoint number 5, which I discussed in our last discussion about the new DCU. But again, this is a really strong comic. I really liked the, you know, the kind of sketchy-ish art from Gene Ha. You know, Scott Snyder kind of overseeing this title, and you know, and Lowell Francis doing the actual dialogue. But you know, again, it steamed forward and it never looked back. You know, it's just really good from momentum wise. You know, characteristic, and it's a really good comic. And you know, I'm glad that, you know, that was one of the things that I did read. Okay, so moving on to yet another Scott Snyder related comic, and this one is pretty directly related because it's written by him, and that's American Vampire number 18. And this one, you know, Snyder, again, just knocking it out of the park. Raphael Albuquerque, just, you know, the art, fantastic. You know, this won the Eisner for Best New Series, and deservedly fucking so, because this definitely is the best new series. And this is basically, it's the final confrontation between Skinner Sweet and Pearl. You know, in the aftermath of what's gone on the you know, on the Japanese island where Jesus Christ, where Hank was with the vassals and everything like that, and the mission that they were on, and there is, you know, there is this, you know, there is an attraction between Skinner and Pearl. You know, it's like, if I were to liken it to anything else, it's kind of like Buffy and Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course. You know, there's an attraction between them, but it's built out of mere heat, and you know, there's respect that they're both kind of creatures of darkness, and it's the same thing. You know, it's very similar here with Pearl and Skinner. You know, there is an attraction, you know, that, you know, Pearl is definitely someone who is torn between two worlds because she desperately loves Hank, but she's also a vampire, and she knows that. And she knows that she's going to continue to stay young, and Hank is going to continue to age, and the craziness of her world is something that will continue to infect Hank's world. And you know, it's a you know, in and of itself, it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful realization for these characters to, you know, for someone like Pearl to have that, you know, she is definitely, you know, someone who is not right for this kind of relationship, but she's not going to give up on it. And as long as Hank agrees, then, you know, they're going to stay together for as long as it takes. And, you know, Snyder is so good at picking out those kinds of, you know, character moments that, you know, also advance the plot. Again, you know, Scott Snyder proving that, you know, he is, you know, one of the very, very, very best creative minds at DC right now. You know, second maybe only to Gail Simone. They may even be, you know, kind of neck and neck. So again, American Vampire, just another great issue, and, you know, fantastic stuff. So we're going to come back, and we're going to have our comic of the week. and another comic that was almost comic of the week. Okay, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.